The morning sky over Seoul looked wrong, Captain Daeho thought as he stared up at the massive alien ship floating above the city like a dark metal mountain. The ship was so big it blocked out the sun and cast shadows across the entire downtown area. People on the streets below looked like tiny ants scurrying around in panic. Ho adjusted his uniform and checked his watch. President Young-mi would arrive soon for the meeting with the aliens. He had been chosen to represent Earth's military forces. Even though he knew his small fleet of ships could never match the alien technology, the enemy had weapons that could crack planets in half, while humans still used missiles and lasers. Their alien ship had appeared 3 days ago without warning. One moment the sky was clear, and the next moment there it was hovering silently over the capital city of South Korea. Within hours, similar ships appeared over every major city on Earth: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, all of them under the shadow of alien vessels. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Empire, and they had a simple message for humanity: submit or die. They had done this to hundreds of other species across the galaxy. Always the same process, always the same result: total surrender or complete destruction. There were no other options in the Empire's way of thinking. Ho walked through the government building where scared officials rushed back and forth carrying papers and shouting orders into phones. Everyone knew this day would decide the fate of the human race. The aliens had given Earth exactly 7 days to make their choice, and today was the 7th day. In the main conference room, President Young-mi sat at a large table surrounded by her advisors. She was a small woman, but her eyes held strength that made even hardened soldiers respect her. She had led Korea through difficult times before, but nothing like this. Nothing that threatened every person on the planet. Commander Tae-jun entered the room carrying a thick folder of military reports. He was Earth's most experienced officer, having fought in 3 different wars. His face looked grim as he placed the folder on the table. The reports inside contained everything they knew about alien technology, and it was not good news. Dr. Yoon-ji was already seated at the table studying her computer screen. She was the world's leading expert on alien biology. Even though she had only been studying the subject for 3 days, her job was to understand how the aliens thought and what they might want from humanity. The alien communication system activated with a harsh buzzing sound that made everyone in the room wince. A holographic image appeared above the table showing the interior of the alien command ship. The walls looked like they were made of black metal and strange symbols glowed with blue light. Admiral Vextor materialized in the hologram, and Daeho felt his skin crawl at the sight of the alien commander. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and 4 eyes arranged around a head that looked like a cross between an octopus and a spider. Its skin was gray and wet-looking, and when it moved, its tentacle fingers made clicking sounds. Behind the admiral stood rows of other aliens, all wearing the same dark uniforms. All of them had the same cold, calculating look in their multiple eyes. These were creatures that had conquered entire star systems, and they looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. President Young-mi, I am Admiral Vextor of the Galactic Empire. The alien spoke through a translation device that made his voice sound like grinding metal. Your 7 days have ended. It is time for your species to make their choice. Mi stood up slowly, keeping her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. We have considered your offer, Admiral. What exactly do you want from humanity? The alien laughed, and the sound was like nails scraping against glass. We want nothing from you accept your surrender. Your species will serve the Empire, as all conquered species serve. We will take your strongest people for our armies, your smartest people for our factories. Your children will be raised to serve the Empire and forget they wherever human. And if we refuse? Tae-jun asked, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. Then you will join the Centauri colonies in extinction, Vextor replied. The images appeared in the hologram showing planets that had once been green and blue but were now nothing but bowls of cracked rock and ash. We gave them the same choice we give you. They chose to fight. They chose poorly. Dr. Yoon-ji leaned forward, studying the alien commander's face. Tell me, Admiral, how many species have accepted your offer willingly? Most of them, Vextor said, but Daeho noticed something strange. The alien's tentacles twitched slightly when he answered. The movement was small, but it suggested the Admiral was not telling the complete truth. Young-mi caught the same detail of how many of those species had anything left to lose when you found them. The alien's eyes narrowed. What do you mean by that? Questioned Ho stepped forward, his military training taking over. I think she means how many of those species were already broken when you arrived. How many had lost their homeworlds, their families, their hope? How easy is it to conquer people who have already given up? The Admiral did not answer immediately, and in that silence Daeho felt something shift in the room. The alien was uncomfortable with the question, which meant it was the right question to ask. Young-mi pressed the advantage. You conquered the Centauri because they fought back alone. They had no allies, no support, no one to call for help. But Earth is different. We still have hope. We still have each other. Foolish hope will not save you from Empire weapons. Vextor snarled, but his tentacles were twitching more rapidly. Now you are primitives with crude technology. What can you possibly do against ships that have conquered 1,000 worlds? Tae-jun smiled grimly. We can make you work for it, Admiral. Every human you kill will cost you ships, soldiers, time. Your empire might win in the end, but it won't be easy and it won't be quick. Other species will see that the mighty empire can bleed. Dr. Yun-ji added her own observation. The empire has enemies, doesn't it, Admiral? Other species that have escaped your conquest. Other groups that fight back from the shadows. You worry about what they might think if they see humans resist successfully the alien. Admiral was silent for a long moment, his 4 eyes studying each human face in turn. Finally, he spoke again. You have courage, I will grant you that, but courage without power is meaningless. You cannot win this fight. Maybe not, Young Mi said quietly, but we can choose how we lose. And sometimes the way you lose is more important than whether you win or not. Vextor made a sound that might have been alien laughter. Very well, President Young Mi, you wish to choose the hard path. That is your right. The Empire respects strength, even when it is foolish strength. You will have your war. The hologram flickered and died, leaving the room in sudden silence. Daeho looked around at his colleagues and saw the same mixture of fear and determination on every face. They had just declared war on an enemy that could destroy planets, but somehow it felt like the right choice. Young Mi stood up and straightened her jacket. Well then, we have work to do, Commander Tae-jun. I want every military unit on full alert. Dr. Yoon-ji, keep studying their behavior patterns. Captain Daeho prepared the fleet as the meeting broke up and people rushed to their duties. Daeho paused at the window, looking up at the alien ship still hanging in the sky like a sword of doom. They had chosen war over surrender, and now they would see what humanity was really made of. The next few hours would determine whether the human race would survive as free beings or die as free beings, but either way they would face their fate on their own terms. The Empire had expected fear or submission. Instead, they got something they had never encountered before, a species that would rather fight impossible odds than live as slaves outside the government building. The people of Seoul went about their daily lives knowing that everything was about to change. The alien ships still blocked out the sun, but somehow the shadows seemed less dark now. Everyone knew the choice had been made, and everyone knew what came next. War was coming to Earth. 3 levels beneath the streets of Seoul, scientist Woo Jin worked frantically in his underground laboratory. The bunker had been built during the Cold War to protect government officials from nuclear attack, but now it served a different purpose. It was humanity's last hope for finding a way to fight back against the Empire. Woo Jin had not slept in 48 hours. His eyes were red and his hands shook from too much coffee, but he could not stop working. The alien ships hanging over every major city were counting down to something terrible, and he might be the only person who could prevent it. The quantum scanner in front of him displayed readings that made no sense according to everything humans knew about physics. The alien ships should not be able to exist with the technology levels they claimed to have. The energy signatures were all wrong, the metal compositions were impossible, and the power sources defied known science. Dr. Yoon-ji entered the laboratory carrying another cup of coffee and a sandwich that Woo Jin would probably forget to eat. She had been working just as hard trying to understand how the aliens thought and behaved. Her research might be just as important as his technical analysis. Any progress? She asked, setting the food beside his computer. Woo Jin pointed at the screen with excitement. Something is very wrong with their ships. The quantum signatures show technology that is at least 1,000 years more advanced than what the Empire claims to possess. What does that mean exactly? Yoon-ji asked, pulling up a chair beside him. It means they did not build these ships, someone else did, and the Empire stole them or found them or conquered the original builders, Woo Jin explained while pulling up more data files. Look at these weapon patterns. They match the defensive systems perfectly, as if the same species designed both the weapons and the shield. Ji studied the information carefully. So you are saying the Empire conquered a more advanced species and took their technology? Exactly, and that explains why they are so aggressive about crushing any resistance. They are afraid that other species will discover their secret. They are not the supreme technological power they pretend to be. Meanwhile, 3 floors above them, Commander Tae-jun was meeting with military leaders from around the world. The video conference included generals from America, Russia, China, Europe, and every other major power. All of them looked tired and worried as they discussed their hopeless situation. The alien fleet has enough firepower to crack the Earth in half, reported General Martinez from the United States Pentagon. Our nuclear weapons might damage their smaller ships, but their main vessels have shields that can deflect anything we throw at them. General Chen from Beijing nodded grimly. We have been running computer simulations for 3 days. Every scenario ends the same way: total human defeat within 6 hours of the start of combat. But Commander Tae-jun had been thinking about something that bothered him since the meeting with Admiral Vextor. The alien had seemed nervous when certain questions were asked about conquered species. Why would a supreme galactic power worry about what humans thought, or did General Petrov? What do your intelligence services know about the Empire's communication patterns? Tae-jun asked. Very strange patterns, Petrov replied. We have been monitoring their transmissions since they arrived. They are not just talking to their own ships. They are sending massive amounts of encrypted data to locations beyond our solar system, and they are jamming communications to certain sectors of space, added General Martinez, as if they do not want us to contact someone out there. Tae-jun felt pieces of a puzzle beginning to fit together. What if the Empire has enemies? What if there are other species fighting back against them? What if they do not want us to know about it? The idea sent ripples of excitement through the video conference. If the Empire was not as all-powerful as they claimed, then maybe humanity had options they had not considered. In another part of the bunker, Captain Deho was reviewing reports from his pilots who had been conducting reconnaissance flights near the alien ships. The information they brought back was disturbing, but also potentially useful. The alien ships maintain constant communication with each other, reported Lieutenant Kim, one of his best pilots, but the communication system seems to be shared with other ships beyond Earth orbit, as if they are part of a much larger network. Intelligence officer Hyo-Rin had been analyzing the alien broadcasts for days, using every code-breaking tool available to human science. She had discovered something that made her hands shake with excitement as she rushed to find Commander Tae-jun. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said, bursting into the military command center. "The aliens are not just jamming our communications outward, they are actively blocking incoming signals from specific star systems." "Which systems?" Tae-jun asked. "The Centauri system, Rigel Vega, and at least 12 other locations, the same places where they claim to have totally destroyed all life." Jun stared at the data, feeling hope bloom in his chest for the first time in days. If they destroyed all life in those systems, why would they need to block communications from there? "Unless they did not destroy all life," Hyo-Rin whispered. "Unless there are survivors hiding in those systems. Survivors who might want to contact us." The revelation hit the room like lightning. If there were other species still fighting the Empire, then humanity was not alone. The aliens had lied about their complete dominance over the galaxy. There were still pockets of resistance out there. President Young-mi arrived in the bunker just as Wu Jin made his breakthrough discovery. She listened carefully as he explained what he had learned about the alien technology and what it meant for their situations. "So they are using stolen technology," Young-mi said thoughtfully. "And they are afraid of other species learning the truth." "More than that," Wu Jin replied excitedly. "I think I can reverse engineer their communication system. If I can figure out how their quantum entanglement network operates, I might be able to send messages using their own equipment." Dr. Yoonji looked up from her behavioral analysis. "The aliens showed stress responses when we asked about the species. They are definitely hiding something about their previous conquests." Commander Tae-jun entered the laboratory with Hyo-Rin and Captain Deho behind him. "The military situation is worse than we thought," he reported, "but the intelligence situation might be better. We believe there are survivors from previous conquests still fighting the Empire, and if we could contact them," Young-mi said slowly, "we would have allies." Tae-jun finished. "Even if they cannot help us directly, they might be able to coordinate attacks on Empire forces and other systems." Wu Jin turned to his computer screen with new determination. "Give me 12 hours, and I think I can jury-rig a transmitter that can piggyback on their quantum communication network. The message would go out to every corner of the galaxy using their own systems." "But what message do we send?" Deho asked. "We do not even know if anyone out there will listen to us." Dr. Yoon-ji smiled for the first time in days. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that humanity refuses to surrender. We tell them that the Empire can be challenged and that they are not alone in wanting freedom." Young-mi looked around the room at the faces of her advisors. These people represented the best hope humanity had for survival. They were tired, scared, and facing impossible odds, but they had not given up. They had found a way to turn defense into offense. "How long before the Empire attacks?" Tae-jun asked. "Our best estimate is 36 hours, Deho replied. "Their ships are moving into attack formations, but they seem to be waiting for something. Then we have 36 hours to get our message ready," Wu Jin said, rolling up his sleeves. "Time to show the galaxy that humans do not go quietly into the dark. The next 24 hours would be the most important in human history. Either they would find a way to contact potential allies across the galaxy, or they would face extinction alone." But for the first time since the alien ships appeared, hope was spreading through the underground bunker. Young-mi stood at the center of the activity, watching her people work with fierce determination. The Empire had made a mistake in threatening humanity. They had awakened something that they did not understand: the human refusal to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible outside. The alien ships continued their countdown to attack, but deep beneath Seoul, the seeds of rebellion were being planted, seeds that would soon grow into something the galactic Empire had never faced before: a species that would rather die fighting than live kneeling. The clock on the wall showed exactly midnight when President Young-mi stepped up to the microphone in the underground communication center. The jury-rigged transmitter that Wu Jin had built from salvaged alien technology hummed with barely contained energy, ready to send humanity's message across the galaxy around her. The best minds on Earth worked frantically at computer terminals. Dr. Yoon-ji monitored the alien behavioral patterns while Commander Tae-jun tracked the Empire fleet movements. Above Seoul, Captain Deho stood ready with his finger on the emergency shutdown button in case the aliens detected their transmission too early. "We are going to piggyback our signal on their quantum communication network," Wu Jin explained one final time to President Young-mi. "The message will be translated into every known alien language and broadcast to every corner of the galaxy that the Empire controls, but they will try to stop us as soon as they realize what is happening." Intelligence Officer Hyo-Rin warned from her monitoring station, "We will have maybe 5 minutes before they can trace the signal back to us." Young-mi nodded and looked around the room at the faces of her team. These people had worked for 36 hours straight To make this moment possible, they had found a way to turn the Empire's own technology against them, and now it was time to see if their desperate plan would work. All the translation protocols ready? She asked. Dr. Yunji checked her computer screen. The message will be broadcast in over 800 different alien languages based on the Empire communication database we copied. Everything from the survivors on Centauri to the slave colonies on Rigel will hear this in their native tongue. Zhang Mi took a deep breath and pressed the activation button. The transmitter came to life with a sound like thunder, and suddenly their voices could reach across light years of space to touch the hearts and minds of beings they had never met. To all species under the Empire rule, this is President Young Mi of Earth. We know you can hear this, we know you are not free, and we know you remember what you lost. The words went out riding on quantum waves that moved faster than light, bouncing through the Empire communication network like a virus spreading through a computer system. On conquered worlds across the galaxy, beings who had not heard words of rebellion in centuries stopped what they were doing in the slave camps of Rigel, where insect-like creatures toiled in mines that stripped their homeworld bare. The message reached ears that had forgotten the sound of hope. In the shattered cities of Alpha Centauri, where the survivors of the Great Bombardment hid in underground tunnels, the words sparked something that had been buried but not destroyed. The Empire wants Earth to surrender. Young Mi continued, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was attempting. They have given us 7 days, but we have learned something. They do not want you to know they are not invincible. They stole their technology from the species they conquered. They are afraid because they know their time is running out. Above, Sol Admiral Vextor was in his command chamber reviewing the final attack plans when his communication officer started screaming in the alien language. The Admiral rushed to the control station and saw what was happening. The quantum network was being flooded with an unauthorized transmission that was spreading faster than they could contain. It cut the transmission, cut it now, Vextor shrieked, but his technicians were already working frantically at their controls. Sir, the signal is using our own network against us, one of them reported. We cannot stop it without shutting down all communications across the entire galaxy. Then shut it down, Vextor ordered, but even as he spoke he knew it was too late. The message was already propagating through quantum space, reaching worlds that the Empire had spent centuries keeping isolated from each other. We are going to fight, Young Mi said, and her words reached the ears of slaves and survivors and rebels across 1,000 star systems, not because we think we can win alone, but because someone has to take the first step. Someone has to say no more. If that someone is us, then so be it. Commander Taejon watched the displays showing alien fleet movements. The Empire ships were breaking formation and moving toward Earth with obvious panic in their actions. Your message is working, he told Young Mi. They are scared, Doctor. Yunji was monitoring the quantum channels, and what she saw made her heart race with excitement. We are getting responses, hundreds of them. The signals are coming from systems the Empire claimed were totally destroyed. There are survivors out there, and they are organizing on the distant world of Kepler, where a race of crystalline beings had been forced to work in energy farms. The message sparked the first coordinated uprising in 50 years. The crystal people had perfect memory, and they remembered everything the Empire had taken from them: their freedom, their children, their future. In the asteroid belt of Vega, where a nomadic species had been forced to mine metals for Empire ships, the rebels who had hidden in the deep space rocks for decades suddenly found new courage. They began attacking Empire supply convoys with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. We did not ask you to die for us, Young Mi continued, and her words gave strength to beings who had forgotten they could be strong. We ask you to live for yourselves. Every act of defiance weakens them. Every moment you resist, you honor those who died today. Humanity says no tomorrow. It could be youth. Transmission was reaching places the Empire had tried to keep secret: prison planets where the most dangerous rebels were held in isolation, refugee camps where the survivors of destroyed worlds waited to be relocated to labor colonies, research stations where alien scientists were forced to develop new weapons for their conquerors. On each of these worlds the message had the same effect. Hope began to replace despair, anger began to replace submission. The Empire had ruled through fear by convincing every species that resistance was impossible, but here was proof that resistance was not only possible but happening right now. Intelligence Officer Yorin was tracking the responses flooding back through the quantum network. The scale is incredible, she reported to the room. Uprisings are starting on dozens of worlds. The Empire forces are being attacked in 17 different star systems at the same time. Admiral Vextor realized that his worst nightmare was coming true. The careful isolation that kept conquered species from communicating with each other was breaking down. The network of fear and hopelessness that held the Empire together was cracking. Prepare the planet killer weapons, he ordered his fleet. We destroy Earth now before this rebellion spreads any further. But even as he gave the order, Vextor knew it might already be too late. The message had done something that no military force could accomplish. It had reminded the galaxy that the Empire could be beaten, that tyranny, what was not permanent, that freedom was still possible. Young Mi concluded her message with words that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. We stand here at the edge of extinction, but we stand as free beings. The Empire can destroy our bodies, but they cannot destroy the idea that we represent. As long as one voice is willing to say no to tyranny, hope will never die. The Transmission ended, but its effects were just beginning. On Earth, the alien fleet moved into attack position, their planet-killing weapons charging for the final assault. But across the galaxy, something had changed. The Empire suddenly found itself fighting not one small rebellion, but a coordinated uprising on a scale they had never faced in the underground bunker. Beneath Sol, the humans who had started this galactic revolution prepared for their final battle. They had lit a fire that would spread across the stars, and even if they did not survive to see it burn, they knew their sacrifice would not be in vain. The Empire had ruled for 1,000 years by keeping their subjects isolated and afraid. But in 5 minutes of quantum transmission, humanity had shattered that isolation forever. The galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Vextor stood in his command chamber watching the tactical displays show chaos erupting across the galaxy. His 4 eyes burned with rage as reports flooded in. From every corner of the Empire, territory after territory was reporting uprisings, slave revolts, and coordinated attacks on Empire installations. "The planet-killer weapons are charged and ready, sir," reported his weapons officer. "The Earth can be destroyed in 60 seconds. Wait," Vextor snarled, studying the flood of emergency communications. "If we destroy Earth now, we make them martyrs. The rebellion will spread even faster. We need to crush this uprising here and now in full view of the galaxy." But even as he spoke, the Admiral knew his situation was desperate. The quantum communication network that had allowed the Empire to control vast distances was now working against them. Every message of rebellion sparked new resistance movements, and the Empire forces were to spread out to respond effectively on the surface of Earth. Commander Tejan watched the alien fleet repositioning through his tactical scope. The main ships were moving into bombardment formation, but something was wrong with their coordination. Several of the smaller vessels were breaking away from the main group, as if they had received conflicting orders. "Sir, we are detecting massive system failures in their communication network," reported Lieutenant Kim from the monitoring station. "Their quantum relays are overloading from all the traffic." Dr. Yoon-ji looked up from her analysis of the alien behavioral patterns. "The Empire is losing control of their own network. The volume of messages from the rebellion is creating feedback loops that are damaging their equipment." President Young-mi realized what this meant. If they cannot coordinate their fleet movements properly, then their greatest advantage is gone. They are used to fighting isolated enemies one at a time. Wu Jin was already working on his next breakthrough. His fingers flew across the quantum analysis equipment as he studied the patterns of the failing alien systems. The same frequency that powers their shields also controls their communication network. If we can overload that frequency with enough signal traffic, we might be able to disrupt their defensive systems. Captain Ho felt hope stirring in his chest for the first time since the alien ships had arrived. "You mean we might actually have a chance to hurt them?" "A small chance," Wu Jin admitted, "but it would require every ship in our fleet to make a coordinated attack at the exact moment when their systems are most vulnerable." The plan was desperate and suicidal, but it was the only option they had. Earth remaining ships would launch a direct assault on the alien command vessel, while ground-based transmitters continued flooding the quantum network with rebellion messages from across the galaxy. Young-mi made the announcement to the world that would be her last broadcast as president of Earth to the people. "With our planet, this is our final hour. We go into battle, not because we expect to win, but because some things are worth dying for. The freedom to choose our own destiny is one of those things." Across the planet, millions of people watched the sky as the small human fleet rose to meet the massive alien armada. Captain Daeho led the formation in his flagship, the Sol, accompanied by every military vessel that could still fly. The ships looked like insects compared to the alien dreadnoughts, but they moved with purpose and determination. In the Rigel system, the insect-like slaves who had received Earth's message were staging their own assault on the Empire mining installations. Their crystalline weapons were primitive compared to Empire technology, but they had something the aliens did not expect: desperate courage, born from centuries of oppression. In the hidden asteroid bases near Vega, the nomadic rebels emerged from deep space to attack Empire supply convoys. They had been waiting decades for this moment when the galaxy would rise as one against their oppressors. The rebellion was spreading faster than the Empire could respond. Worlds that had been quiet for generations suddenly erupted in violence. Prison planets where the most dangerous rebels were held became focal points of coordinated breakouts. Research stations fell to their own enslaved scientists who turned Empire weapons against their masters. Admiral Vextor received reports that made his tentacles writhe. With Fury 17 star systems in active rebellion, 43 Empire installations under attack, communication networks failing across 3 galactic sectors. This was not supposed to be possible. Destroy the Earth. Now he screamed at his weapons officer before this gets any worse, but the weapons officer was staring at his control panel in horror. "Sir, the quantum feedback is interfering with our targeting systems. The planet killer weapons are not responding to commands." At that moment, Captain Daeho began his final attack run on the alien command ship. The Sol and its escort vessels had loaded every nuclear weapon humanity could spare into their cargo holds. It was a one-way mission, and everyone knew it. "For Earth, for freedom!" Daeho shouted over the communication system as his ship accelerated toward the massive alien vessel. The Empire had superior technology, but they had never faced anything like human determination. The alien defensive systems tried to stop the approaching human ships, but the quantum interference was disrupting their targeting computers. The massive energy beams that should have vaporized the attackers instead fired wildly into space. Wu Jin watched from the underground bunker as his plan reached its climax. The alien systems were overloading exactly as he had predicted. The same technology that made the Empire so powerful across vast distances was now their weaknesses. Sol struck the alien command ship at maximum velocity, and the nuclear weapons detonated in a flash of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. The explosion tore through the alien vessel's shields and ripped apart its command structure. Admiral Vex Tor and his entire staff were vaporized in an instant. Without their command ship, the remaining alien vessels fell into chaos. Their communication systems were still failing, and now they had no central authority to coordinate their actions. Some ships fled toward deep space, while others fired randomly at anything that moved on distant worlds. The news of the command ship's destruction spread through the rebellion networks like wildfire. The Empire was not invincible. Their greatest fleet had been damaged by a primitive species. Using stolen technology and desperate courage, the crystal beings of Kepler launched their own version of Dehos attack, ramming Empire installations with ships packed with energy explosives. The nomadic rebels of Vega began hunting down Empire commanders and broadcasting their victories across the quantum network. But the most important victory was not military, it was psychological. The Empire had ruled through fear and the illusion of invincibility. That illusion was now shattered forever. Every species in the galaxy could see that. The Empire could be hurt, could be confused, could be beaten. Young Mi stood in the ruins of Seoul, watching the surviving alien ships retreat into hyperspace. The city was damaged and thousands of people had died, but humanity had survived the first day of their war against the Empire. Did we win? She asked Wu Jin, who was monitoring the galactic communications. We lit the fuse, he replied with tears streaming down his face. The Empire is falling apart, but it will take time. The rebellion we started will continue long after we are gone across the galaxy. The effects of Earth's sacrifice continued to spread. Empire forces found themselves fighting dozens of different species simultaneously while their communication and command structure crumbled. The conquered worlds that had been isolated for centuries were now coordinating their attacks. The rebellion had become a revolution, and the revolution was becoming a war of liberation that would reshape the entire galaxy. The Empire had made their greatest mistake when they threatened a species that would rather die free than live as slaves. Commander Tay John coordinated with the surviving alien species to plan the next phase of the war. The Empire still had massive fleets and powerful weapons, but they had lost their greatest advantage, the ability to fight each rebellion separately. The galaxy had learned that unity was stronger than tyranny, that hope was more powerful than fear, and that sometimes the smallest voice saying no could bring down the mightiest empire. The war was far from over, but for the first time in 1,000 years, freedom had a chance. 2 years had passed since the day Earth said no to the Galactic Empire, and the galaxy was completely transformed. The massive ships that once carried fear and oppression across the stars now served as raw materials for the construction of something entirely new. The Galactic Alliance had risen from the ashes of the Empire like a phoenix born from the fire of a rebellion. President Young Mi stood in the Alliance Council chamber looking out at delegates from over 300 different species. The chamber itself had been built from the wreckage of Empire dreadnoughts. As a symbol of what unity could accomplish when free beings worked together, the walls were decorated with quantum crystal displays showing the flags and symbols of every liberated world. The meeting today was special because it marked the second anniversary of what historians were already calling the Great Awakening. The day when one small blue planet had broadcast a message that changed everything. The day when the galaxy remembered that freedom was not a gift but a choice that had to be made again and again. Commander Taejon now served as the Alliance Defense Coordinator, and he worked closely with former Empire officers who had joined the rebellion. During the final months of the war, many of the alien species that had served the Empire had been slaves themselves, forced to fight for their oppressors or watch their families die. The transition had not been easy. Some worlds had been so damaged by centuries of oppression that they needed years of help to rebuild their societies. Others had been so isolated that they had forgotten how to communicate with different species, but slowly and carefully the Alliance was learning to work together. Yoon-ji had become the director of interspecies communication, and her job was to help different alien cultures understand each other. The Empire had deliberately kept species separated to prevent exactly the kind of cooperation that now flourished throughout the galaxy. Her research had revealed something remarkable about the Empire final years. The ruling class had become increasingly paranoid and isolated. They had stopped trusting even their own officers and had begun replacing biological beings with mechanical servants. This isolation had made them vulnerable to the kind of coordinated rebellion that Earth had sparked. Wu Jin now led the Alliance Technology Council and his team worked to understand and improve the advanced technology that the Empire had stolen from conquered species. The quantum communication network had been rebuilt as a tool of connection rather than control, allowing instant communication between the far-flung worlds of the Alliance. But perhaps the most important change was not in technology or politics, but in the hearts and minds of the galaxy inhabitants. The Empire had convinced billions of beings that resistance was hopeless, that freedom was impossible, that the strong would always rule the weak. Message had shattered those beliefs forever. Even children who had been born after the Empire fall grew up knowing that ordinary people could stand up to tyranny and win. They learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite that fear. The Memorial Gardens of New Seoul had become a pilgrimage site for beings from across the galaxy. They came to see the simple monument that bore the names of Captain Daeho and all the others who had died in the final battle against the Empire command ship. The inscription on the monument was written in every language spoken in the galaxy, but the meaning was the same in all of them. They said no so we could say yes. It was a reminder that freedom always came at a price, and that the price was usually paid by those who would never see the results of their sacrifice. Young Mi often visited the Memorial Gardens, especially on quiet evenings when she could think about how much had changed. The scared woman who had faced Admiral Vex's ultimatum seemed like a different person from a different lifetime. She had learned that leadership was not about having all the answers, but about making the hard choices when no good options existed. The Alliance had its own problems. Of course, 300 different species with different needs, different cultures, and different ideas about how the galaxy should be governed did not always agree on everything. There were trade disputes, territorial disagreements, and cultural misunderstandings, but these were the problems of free beings working together rather than the problems of slaves obeying their masters. The Alliance had established courts to resolve disputes peacefully and had created systems to ensure that smaller species had just as much voice as larger ones. The economic transformation had been just as dramatic as the political one. The Empire had been based on extraction and exploitation, taking resources from conquered worlds to feed the appetite of the ruling class. The Alliance economy was based on cooperation and mutual benefit. Worlds that had been strip-mined for Empire projects were now being restored with help from species that had expertise in ecological rehabilitation. The slave camps had been converted into research stations and schools. The weapons factories had been retooled to produce medical equipment and communication devices. But the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about conflict. The Empire had seen every disagreement as a reason for war, every difference as a threat to be eliminated. The Alliance had learned that diversity was strength, and that different perspectives made better solutions possible. The children of Earth who had grown up during the war against the Empire were now young adults serving throughout the Alliance military and civilian organizations. They carried with them the lesson that their parents had learned. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand up and say, no. Captain Daeho's sacrifice had become legend throughout the galaxy. His story was told in schools on hundreds of worlds as an example of how ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they chose to act with courage. The Soul had become the first ship in the Alliance fleet to bear the motto not for conquest but for freedom. The quantum communication network that had once carried the Empire orders now carried messages of hope and cooperation. Scientific discoveries were shared freely between worlds. Cultural exchanges brought different species together in ways that had been impossible under Empire rule. Young Mi concluded her speech to the Alliance Council with words that had become a tradition at every major gathering. We are here today not because we defeated an empire, but because we chose to believe that freedom was possible. We chose to believe that different species could work together. We chose to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. The delegates from 300 worlds rose to their feet in the traditional Alliance salute. Each species had their own way of showing respect, but they had all learned to recognize and honor the gestures of their neighbors. It was a small thing, but it represented something that the Empire had never understood. Unity did not require uniformity. As the ceremony ended and the delegates began to leave, young Mi remained in the chamber looking out at the stars visible through the quantum crystal windows. Somewhere out there, new species were discovering space travel and beginning to explore the galaxy. The Alliance had established first contact protocols to ensure that these new species would be welcomed as equals rather than conquered as slaves. The message that Earth had broadcast during its darkest hour had become the foundation of a new kind of galactic civilization. The Empire had fallen not because of superior weapons or advanced technology, but because of a simple idea that had spread from world to world like wildfire. The idea that every being had the right to choose their own destiny, that freedom was not something that could be given or taken away, but something that lived in the hearts of those who were willing to fight for it. The galaxy had learned that the most powerful weapon was not a planet killer or a quantum disruptor, but a single word spoken with conviction. No, and from that single word had grown something that the Empire had never imagined possible, a galaxy where different species worked together as equals, where conflicts were resolved through discussion rather than domination, where the future belonged to those who chose to build it Together the war against the Empire had ended, but the work of building a better galaxy had just begun. It would take generations to fully heal the damage that centuries of oppression had caused. But for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy had hope, and hope, as Earth had proven, was the most powerful force in the universe.